Who has been flying under the Piedar? Let's get into it. Just before we do jump straight into it, thank you so much for everyone who has watched my training video from, I think it was last Thursday's training. It's already up to like 8,000 views or something ridiculous like that. I didn't think it was going to be that big, so thank you all so much. I'm going to try and get down to at least one training session every week. Definitely trying to during preseason, you know, working around work and annual leave and all that sort of stuff. But then definitely going to try once every week during the regular season, which I think will be cool. Just adds another little bit of content for you guys. I know there was music playing, and I know I had a lot of comments on here and on Instagram as well about the music that was playing. My microphones have been stuffed up for a long time, and I think it's something to do with my phone. So when I was recording, I thought it was recording through the mic and the windbreaker and stuff like that, but it wasn't, and it was just so windy, you couldn't hear any of the sounds of the ground. So I'm going to try and fix that for the next training session and get a bit more on the ground on the ground sound. So fingers crossed that sort of works out, but that's why I had the music. But anyway, let's go with this new video. So in this video, I wanted to talk about a couple of players, or a few players really, that I think have gone under the Piedar, or the Forgotten Men. I think I might call this title Under the Piedar, because Forgotten Men just sounds a little bit negative. So I just want to talk about players who might not crack the best 23 every single week, but they're not talked about every single week, like your Finn McRae's, like your Reef McGuinness's, like your Ash Johnson. Some people who have literally just gone under the radar. So let's get into it with number one. So the first guy I want to talk about is Nathan Krueger. So Kruegs came from Geelong a couple of years ago, and we were after a big-bodied forward. This was before, you know, Dan McStay's time and stuff like that. And it looked like we were going to get that sort of big forward. You remember, he had a couple of games in 2021, really broke out in 2022. He played 5 games in 2022, kicked those really nice goals against Adelaide. I'll never forget those ones. And, you know, he has just been very luckless, and just injuries, his shoulders, you know, he came on in that preliminary final against Sydney in the qualifying final, and just, you know, he is so big, and he reminds me of that sort of, and someone in the comments said that he's the same sort of weight and height as Dan McStay, and he's kind of similar, but, you know, he could have been, or he could be anything, and exactly what we need. And we're talking about Ash Johnson, we're talking about Reef McGuinness. Who's going to replace Dan McStay? Who's going to replace Dan McStay? Nathan Krueger should be one of those guys in that conversation, because in the VFL, if you've watched him, especially towards the second half of that VFL season, towards finals, he was absolutely a wrecking ball, kicking bags and bags of goals, taking really good contested marks, and dominating VFL, playing sort of AFL standard footy in the VFL. But it's the big question of, can his body hold up to play AFL football? Because we can't afford to, you know, and we're going for a back-to-back campaign. We're trying to defend the premiership. So we can't afford to put a guy in the forward line that his body is going to break down. And I don't want that to happen, of course. I want to see Krueger at his best. And, you know, he's out of contract this season, so he's going to have to show that he can get back to his best, that he can compete with Ash Johnson, with Reef McGuinness, because it'll be those three guys who try to take Dan McStay's spot in the squad. So it's going to be really interesting, and no one really talks about him anymore because of those injuries, but I hope we've seen the worst of Kruegs with those injuries, and now we're just going to get the best. The second guy who I think is under the Piedar is Harvey Harrison. We saw Harvey Harrison debut this season. It was against West Coast. He kicked a goal, and then he kicked a goal in each of his subsequent games that he played. And we saw some really nice things. You know, I think he's been forgotten because of the likes of Bobby Hill, because of Jack Ginnivan as well. So he played when, I'm pretty sure he played when Ginnivan wasn't playing, if memory serves me correctly. So Harvey Harrison is another one of those sort of small forwards that can be that sort of dangerous sort of forward. What he gave us that Ginnivan didn't was that sort of defensive side. He had a little bit more tricks up his sleeve. Yes, he only got a handful of games, but he was sort of on that lighter build side, and you can kind of see coming back now from the photos that people are uploading from training and stuff like that, he has gotten bigger in his arms. You can tell. So, you know, starting to sort of break tackles, and I don't think he sort of cracks into the team and plays, you know, a dozen or more games this season. He probably plays another 3 or 4 games this season when we need him, because, you know, we have Lachie Schultz, Bobby Hill. But now we've got that option of Harvey Harrison with another preseason under his belt. I don't think it's going to be a breakout year for him, but here's another one of those sort of small forwards that we have that could be one of those guys that sort of, once he sort of gets rolling, and maybe it's not this year, maybe it is next year, he sort of breaks out into this team and we see the wheels start turning with him. The third guy I want to talk about here is someone that I was really, really, really excited for, and I still am excited for him. It's Charlie Dean. Now, we picked up Charlie Dean as a mature age draft pick, and he just came off, and I'm going to mess this up, so I'm going to read it. He came off winning the Fothergill Round Mitchell Medal, which is awarded to the most promising talent in the VFL competition in 2021, and then we picked him up. A key defender / intercept marking sort of guy. I feel like he is Jeremy Howe's natural successor. He could play a little bit taller if he needs to. Just needs to put on, a little bit more muscle, get those runs through the legs. But for the last 2 seasons, and it sucks. It's so sad because it's been this foot injury, this reoccurring sort of foot injury where in 2022 when he played, something happened to his foot and he couldn't play. 2023 at the start of the year, he started running again. He was looking good, and then bang, onto the long-term injury list. And how things work out, how the universe works out, because of Charlie Dean's unfortunate injury, we pick up Markov in the SSP right at the last minute, goes on to become a premiership player. So, sliding doors. But Charlie Dean started running again last year. He played a couple of games in the VFL. I think he played the last 2 or 3 games maybe in the VFL. And he looked like he hadn't lost a step, no pun intended. So I want to see Charlie Dean dominate in the VFL. I don't think he gets a lot of games this year in the AFL. Probably not. He probably doesn't debut unless, touch wood, something drastic happens in that backline or to those backline players. So I just want to see him get back to that 2021 form that he showed during, I think it was his time in Williamstown. Get back to it in 2024 and show us that you are Jeremy Howe's natural successor. And I feel like this is probably one guy that's on the top of my under the Piedar list, even though these aren't sort of numbered in any sort of order. But I feel like he's the one I am most excited to see dominate in the VFL to show us what he can really, really do. The last guy I've got on my list, and you've probably forgot about him, the forgotten man under the Piedar, is Joe Richards. Joe Richards, another mature age, kind of like Charlie Dean, another mature ager, who was coached by Ben Reid at, was it Wangaratta? He's a teacher from Wangaratta, played in the Oven and Murray's League in regional Victoria, and absolutely dominated. Look at this CV, right? So 175 centimetres, 2 premierships, one with Ben Reid, 3 club best and fairest, and 2 league best and fairest runners up. We picked him up 2022 now. Well, it is a couple of years ago now. And he is an excitement machine. Can kick both sides. He's got speed. He's got that movement that we need. Can play the way Collingwood play. He was tagged week in, week out during his time at the Oven and Murray's League. I'm probably butchering that as well. And he just is another one of those small forwards where, what is he, 170-something centimetres, kind of like Jared Blair, maybe a little bit quicker than Jared Blair, and kind of like Harvey Harrison, where I want to see these guys absolutely dominate in the VFL to get that sort of call up to the AFL if we need these sort of smaller forwards, because you got to think that in the squad we don't really have that, in my sort of opinion, where it's like a natural forward pocket, like an old school forward pocket who is small, quick, agile, can kick a goal. Kind of like, probably the only one in that is Bobby Hill. I don't classify Jamie Elliott. I wouldn't classify Schultz as that either. But, Joe Richards, Jared Blair, those sort of Alan Didak, those sort of guys who I'm sort of talking about are those natural forward pockets. And I think Joe Richards, and, to a lesser extent, sort of Harvey Harrison, will be those guys. And I think it might be Joe Richards' last year on contract, so he's going to want to show something. 14 goals in the VFL, 4 best on grounds in the VFL as well. This is going to be, hopefully, his breakout year. I'd love for him to debut one game where he just bloody against the West Coast, against a North Melbourne, and let's see what he can do. We probably wouldn't be at the MCG against those teams, but at Marvel or at Optus or something like that, I reckon that would be really, really cool. But those have been my 4 players who I think are under the Piedar. You guys suggested Aiden Begg, Reef McGuinness, Harvey Harrison, Finn McRae. Like those guys, yes, Aiden Begg is a guy that's under the Piedar. You could even chuck in Oscar Steen there as well as the Ruckman. But, you know, Finn McRae, Reef McGuinness, these guys get talked about week in, week out. Yes, they're still sort of not in the best 23 in here and there, but I think they're sort of well-known names now in Collingwood circles. It's these other sort of players where, you know, Nathan Krueger had a lot of raps on him, and then these injuries, and Joe, you know, Charlie Dean as well, who I think just need to take their game up in the VFL this season, and who I think are flying right under the radar. And this will be the year where, hopefully, fingers crossed, they're on the map now, and people are sort of talking about them. But anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. Was that list good? Who would you put in there? All your thoughts down in the comment section below. But until then, like, comment, subscribe, Tay family, Tay friends, Tay pets, and until next time, double shaggers, I'll swoop you later.